The flames rose higher, the crowd leaned forward, and the girl who had once led armies, a girl who had never held a sword before her visions began, stood tied to a wooden post, praying through smoke she could barely breathe. She was 19 years old. Some called her a witch, some called her a heretic, some called her the only reason France was still alive. But the fire didn't just kill a person. It tried to kill a question history has never stopped asking. Was Joan of Arc chosen by God or chosen by men who needed a miracle? Joan of Arc, saint, heretic, or strategist? Before she was a symbol, Joan was a farm girl. Born in Domremy, on the edge of a war she did not start, to parents who expected nothing more from her than marriage, prayer, and survival. She could not read, she could not write. She had no army, no wealth, no education, no reason to ever be remembered. France was dying. The English controlled cities, land, strategy, and morale. The rightful French heir, the Dauphin, was in hiding, half believing he would never wear the crown he was born for. And out of all the nobles, knights, priests, scholars, prophets, and warriors, history gives us a teenage girl who walks into the story claiming something unthinkable. I hear voices from heaven. They told me to save France. That moment splits the historical record in two, because either she really did hear something no one else could, or she believed something so deeply that others believed because she did. Joan said the voices were saints. Others said they were delusions. Some suspected political theater. But the first impossible thing wasn't the voices. It was that people listened, a girl with no power, convincing grown men with everything to lose. That was the first miracle, or the first strategy, and nobody knew which one it was. The voices, Joan said, began when she was 13. Not whispers, not dreams, clear instructions. Go to the Dauphin, save France, drive out the English. These messages came not from priests, parents, or generals, but from someone no one else could hear. And here is where the mystery deepens. If Joan was lying, she risked execution. If she was hallucinating, she was disturbingly functional. If she was speaking truth, then France was being guided by something otherworldly. Doctors, centuries later, would suggest epilepsy. Psychologists would diagnose trauma. Skeptics would say she was coached by political insiders. But none of those theories explain the part historians still can't dismiss. She convinced the Dauphin, the future King of France, to meet her. Think about that. A girl with no title, no escort, no army, no proof, walks into one of the most guarded courts in Europe and demands an audience with a man who holds a nation's fate. And she gets it, not because she forces her way in, but because France was desperate enough to gamble on a miracle, or desperate enough to stage one. The court tested her, interrogated her, sent priests to catch her in lies. She passed every test, either through divine power or terrifying confidence. And the moment they allowed her near the Dauphin, something shifted. Not in politics, in belief, because armies don't march only on orders, they march on hope. And Joan had become the one thing France had run out of. Armor was forged for her, a banner was painted for her, and a sword, discovered behind the altar of a church, was handed to her as if destiny itself had placed it there. But here is what makes Joan of Arc more than a legend. She didn't just inspire troops. She commanded them, and she didn't fight like a symbol. She fought like a strategist. Her first battlefield was Orléans, a city the English had blockaded for 7 months. Every French attempt had failed. The war was nearly lost. Joan rode in and did what no general had dared. She attacked fast. She attacked relentlessly. She turned siege warfare, slow, defensive, hopeless, into explosive offense. Modern military scholars still study her decisions. She turned morale into a weapon. She rode into danger instead of ordering others into it. She reframed the war from "we are losing" to "God says we win." And the soldiers, men who had seen defeat for years, starting shouting one phrase that England feared most: "The Maid is with us." Within days, the siege was broken. France, for the first time in years, tasted victory, and the world noticed something strange. Joan was not simply lucky. She was not passive. She was not controlled by advisors. She led. So the question deepened: was she guided by heaven, or was she a military genius hidden in the body of an illiterate farm girl? With each victory, Joan's influence grew, and that made her valuable, but also dangerous. Because once the Dauphin was crowned King Charles VII, Joan had fulfilled her mission, at least politically. Her usefulness to those in power was now in question. She wanted to continue the war and push the English completely out of France. The new king wanted to negotiate and consolidate power. Joan wanted risk. Charles wanted stability. She wanted liberation. He wanted a throne. History is full of kings who used people until they became inconvenient. And Joan became inconvenient. So when she continued fighting without full royal support, she became vulnerable. And in 1430 she was captured, not by the English, but by the Burgundians, French allies of England. She waited for ransom. Kings normally pay for their war heroes. But Charles VII did nothing. He did not negotiate. He did not bargain. He did not even send envoys. He let the girl who gave him his crown fall into enemy hands. Whether it was fear, politics, or cowardice, the betrayal was complete, and Joan was sold to the English, not as a prisoner of war, as a heretic, because killing a soldier is legal, but killing a saint requires a trial. Joan was not tried in a court of war. She was tried in a court of religion, because the English didn't just want her dead, they wanted her discredited. A warrior killed in battle becomes a martyr. A heretic burned at the stake becomes a warning. So the trial focused not on strategy, not on victories, not on military orders, but on voices, clothing, and obedience. They asked, did the voices come from saints or demons? Why did you wear men's armor? Did you place your own will above the church? The trial lasted months. Every answer Joan gave was written down, still preserved today. And what shocks historians most is not her theology. It is her clarity, her intelligence, her refusal to break. A teenage girl, standing alone, interrogated by university-trained priests, and she held her ground. Not with shouting, with logic, with conviction, with a steadiness that frightened her judges. She was offered life if she denied her voices. She refused. She was threatened with torture. She stayed silent. Eventually, exhausted, she signed a confession, a moment of collapse. But when they chained her in a cell and took away her women's dress, forcing her to return to male clothing, something she had been ordered not to do, the court declared she had relapsed into sin. It was the loophole they needed. The verdict was sealed, not by God, by paperwork. On 30th May 1431, Joan was led to the marketplace of Rouen. Witnesses say she asked for a cross. A soldier broke a stick in half and tied cloth to it. They say she forgave her executioners. They say she cried out the name of Jesus until smoke filled her lungs. When the fire was done, the English ordered her ashes thrown into the Seine. No relics, no grave, no trace. They had killed the body, but not the question, because just 25 years later, the church declared the trial invalid. A century after that, Joan was celebrated as a national heroine. 4 centuries later, she was made a saint. France, which had once let her burn in silence, rewrote her as a symbol of faith, purity, nationalism, and divine victory. And every generation since has claimed her. The church claimed her. Revolutionaries claimed her. Feminists claimed her. Nationalists claimed her, skeptics claimed her, movies remade her, armies quoted her. Joan of Arc stopped being a person. She became a mirror. Whatever people believed, they saw in her. Which brings us to now. So who was Joan of Arc? A saint, a heretic, a genius, a pawn, a girl sent by heaven, or a girl abandoned by earth? The truth is this: we do not know what she heard, we only know what she did. She walked into a war with nothing but conviction, and men with swords followed her. She faced kings, generals, priests, and death, and never once acted like she was the one who should be afraid. She lost her life, but not her voice. Because history didn't silence her, it echoed her. And every time the world runs out of hope, leadership, courage, or faith, someone brings her name back and asks the same question: how did a girl with no power change the fate of a nation? And the answer depends on who's asking. To believers, she was chosen. To skeptics, she was used. To soldiers, she was fearless. To feminists, she was proof. To politicians, she was a symbol. To historians, she was an anomaly. And to us, she is a reminder that sometimes the world doesn't change because of strength or bloodline or education, but because one person decides the story isn't over yet. So before this video ends, let me leave you with this. If Joan truly heard voices from heaven, then the world witnessed a miracle. But if she didn't, if every decision, every command, every victory came from the mind of a teenage girl with no training, no schooling, and no power, then the miracle wasn't divine. It was human. Which one is harder to believe? If this story made you rethink Joan of Arc, even a little, hit the like button so the algorithm knows this kind of history still matters. And if you want more stories where the line between legend and truth is razor thin, subscribe. There are more names history has half forgotten. And we're just getting started.